Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast, your go-to source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We hope you tune in often for all things people management, organizational development and change, organizational leadership, and social impact related. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI podcast episode, I talk with Dr. Sherry Benton about combating workplace burnout. Dr. Sherry Benton, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you. I'm excited to explore together with you today the topic of combating workplace burnout. Burnout has always been an issue, and it's something we talk about, but up until the pandemic, it seems like it was kind of on the side. It was on the periphery. People were aware of it. Leaders would be understanding and a little bit cautious around it, but largely it was something that didn't get top priority or top focus. And I feel like during the pandemic, that's shifted a little bit, and we've had a greater level of attention towards this burnout phenomenon as people have been juggling and battling, both the health and the social and the economic outcomes and costs of this pandemic, and just trying to juggle work life, family, and all of those different things. So we're going to unpack that and explore that together today, and really what leaders can do within their organizations and their teams to combat that workplace burnout and to really help their people to thrive in a healthy environment. As we get started, I wanted to share Dr. Benton's bio with everybody. Sherry Benton, PhD, is the founder and chief science officer, also a professor emeritus and former counseling center director at the University of Florida. She has over 25 years of clinical and research experience in counseling, psychology, and college student mental health. She has focused her career on reducing mental health disparities and improving access to evidence-based mental health treatment. And her experience in the college counseling world revealed a need for a more efficient and effective way to deliver mental health therapy. She is board certified in counseling psychology by the American Board of Professional Psychology and is a fellow in the American Psychological Association. And really, I could go on and on and on, but I'll leave it there for now. Anything else you would like to add by way of your background, personal context, professional background, before we launch on into the conversation today?
I think that pretty much covers it. I sound pretty good on paper.
Wonderful, wonderful. And it's a pleasure to have you here, and I appreciate you sharing your expertise with me and my listeners today. So why don't we start by defining workplace burnout? Clinically, from a clinical perspective, as you work with people, what is workplace burnout? And then we can start to talk about strategies to combat that.
Okay, well, it's important to know that burnout is not really a diagnosable disorder. It's something that the majority of people are going to experience at some point in time. Anytime the stress level gets too high, whether that's at home or at work or at school, we're at risk for developing burnout. Some factors that kind of lead into burnout is feeling like you have a lack of control over what happens in your life or what happens at your job. Feeling like you have high expectations put on you, but very little support. Being in some kind of a toxic family situation. Having too many demands on your time, whether it be kids, parents, family, job, all at one time, and feeling like you can't meet everybody's expectations. Feeling isolated or unsupported, and this is probably one of the big things that's happened through the pandemic, is people have lost their social connections and work teams, working from home, feeling like they work too much at the expense of their personal life. think one of the drawbacks of social media, email, and cell phones is you can feel like you have a digital chain to your job all the time and not having any break from that. Feeling like you're missing out on time with friends and family and doing things that you enjoy. All of those things can increase the risk of developing burnout. And certainly things like stress about paying rent or mortgages, stress about housing, income insecurity, have enough food, all of that makes us more susceptible to burnout.
Really, as you were describing that, it's just a good reminder that all different aspects of our lives do bleed together. So sometimes we talk about compartmentalization, we talk about leave home at home and work at work. The reality is work life impacts home life, and home life impacts work life, and all the various stressors that we have. There's a cumulative effect of that, and that does impact us at work, regardless of whatever, our intention might be in terms of being quote unquote professional and leaving, home at home, our personal stuff at home. And so as organizational leaders, we just have to be cognizant of that. We have to recognize that is happening, and gone are the days that we could simply try to, work with our people in the workplace about workplace things. Now we have to provide empathy, support, and help them think through, what they may need in terms of other resources that have nothing to do with their job. If they're dealing with a difficult marriage or home environment or abuse or any of a number of things that could be happening that could be very difficult. And we can try to provide support for that, because the reality is, even if everything is going peachy at work, if things are really crummy in other aspects of the person's life, burnout is much more likely to occur, and the negative impacts of burnout are going to impact the business regardless of whether it's a workplace environment issue or a boss issue or whatever, right? So we have to recognize that. We have to recognize that it all connects, and there's overlap, and that's just the way it is. That's how we are as human beings. One thing in my mind that means is that we have to simultaneously live within this tension of trying to have healthy boundaries around different aspects of our lives, while also recognizing that, the stress that we felt at work today can and probably will impact how we're going to be with our kids and our spouse, when we come home. Yeah. Right.
An example that I think is pretty much everywhere right now with the pandemic is especially young families. You've got your kids are in school, they're not in school, you're trying to deal with daycare, at the same time you're trying to work from home, and things like it can feel like your kids lost a year of school. It can feel like you can't find a way to really take care of them at the same time that you're still taking care of your job responsibility. So while you might have been really good at compartmentalizing and managing stress before the pandemic, now you have huge additional issues to try to deal with, and that can really trigger burnout. And I think we're seeing some of the results of that with the whole Great Resignation. People arrive at the place where I've got to choose between pouring myself into my job versus taking care of my kids and my family. And they're making the decision that they may have to change jobs or leave their job to really be able to deal with all of these multiple stressors that are really brought on, especially during the pandemic.
Yeah. And just as an example, longtime listeners of the podcast know I have a large family, 6 children, ages 8 to 18. They're all in K-12 system. And so we've, just like many of you, we've dealt with kids at home and schooling. Now they have gone back to school this year, which has been wonderful, for them and for us, for me and my wife. But with the Omicron variant running, rampant right now, they're actually back at home. So the school just shut down and sent the kids back home. And so now we're juggling again. And just simple things like juggling the number of devices it takes to do online learning when you have, me and my spouse work. So we needed a computer, and then my kids, each of them have online schooling, so they need devices, and we're like trying to juggle all that. And it's stressful, no matter how patient we are with each other, no matter how accommodating we're trying to be. It's just stressful, and it adds an extra layer onto everything else that people are trying to deal with. And so, not to say woe is me, that my experience is the experience that countless families are dealing, they're dealing with the same thing right now. And so we just need to have that realization and that empathy, and recognize as leaders, is there really a need for that meeting, or can we get rid of it? Do we really need to be in person? Can we give more flexibility? People provided so much flexibility, especially early on in the pandemic. And then over time, leaders and organizations have been reeling that back in and trying to get their people back into the workplace, either in a, permanent face-to-face environment or a hybrid environment. And there's pros and cons to all of that, but ultimately flexibility and accommodation, I think, is really key when people are dealing with all these sorts of things.
I think that's true. I think a lot of businesses are finding too that the things they saw as perks that made the job with their company more desirable are no longer working. Gym membership means less in the middle of a pandemic. Having that coffee bar at work means less. And what people really need when they're doing the hybrid or working from home or juggling, taking care of their kids and trying to do their job, are a lot of helpful resources for dealing with those things, including good mental health resources online.
Yeah, absolutely. So that, I think, takes us where I want to go next. As we continue to try to understand this issue around workplace burnout, there is, this stigma still, even though I think it's been declining, there's stigma around mental health, and, someone being willing to admit that they need assistance, they need help. So part of it is, as we're trying to combat workplace burnout, I think part of it is we need to decrease the stigma around mental health. We need everyone to recognize and understand that it's, perfectly okay for people to go to counseling or to get medication or to just take personal time to decompress and to recenter themselves and such. Do you have any thoughts or strategies around how we can decrease that stigma, especially in a high performing, highly competitive kind of an environment where someone may be super hesitant to go to their boss and say, you know what, I just really need some assistance because I'm dealing with stress, anxiety, depression, or whatever? I'm excited to announce the publication of my new book from HCI Press, Bluer Than Indigo Leadership: The Journey of Becoming a Truly Remarkable Leader. Early in my adult life, I learned about an Asian proverb that translates as bluer than indigo. If you think about the color indigo, it is a brilliant, deep, and vibrant blue, what some would call the bluest of blues. To have something that is bluer than indigo is rare and truly remarkable. Contrary to popular myth, there is no one-size-fits-all or cookie-cutter approach to effective leadership. There's no silver bullet, no secret sauce, no go-to model that will solve all of our problems. The truth is, great leaders have all had their unique strengths and flaws, and have all had to discover and then pave their own distinctive path in their life's journey to fulfill their leadership potential. Bluer Than Indigo Leadership will help you discover your own path and explore those ordinary, everyday actions that will help you respond to an uncertain future and produce extraordinary results for individuals, teams, and organizations.
I think one of the first things is to shift how we think about mental health. I think traditionally, we've thought about it as either mental illness or not mental illness. And as long as we think of it as something that is wrong with you, that you're somehow less than, that's stigma in a nutshell. And the reality is everybody has mental health. We all have some level of mental health, and it's not static, it's dynamic. It changes with the number of stressors in our life. You can be doing fabulously in terms of your overall well-being and happiness with life, and then your parents die in a car accident, or things happen. I think one of the big ones out here in Colorado where I live is we just had almost 1,000 families lose their homes in the fire. Well, those stressors happen. So whatever our state of mental health, and everyone is a state of mental health, it's dynamic. It will change with the stressors in our life. And we need to recognize that it's just how we are right now. It's not how we are going to be all the time. And it's not about disorders or not disorders. It's about kind of maximizing our functioning. So even when we're doing great, we should do good prevention things like kind of look at our thinking, do some meditation, those kind of things. But, everyone has mental health, and they have different levels of it at different times in their life. And to sort of recognize that that's just normal. 75% of people are going to, at some point in their adult life, feel burnout. So that's not a disorder. That's a normal state that people experience from time to time. And getting help with that is the way that you get through it. We would never wait until we had diabetes to pay attention to our diet, and we would not wait until we have terrible physical disabilities to take up exercise. But somehow we think you have to have a terrible disorder before you go get help for your mental health. And if you think about that in terms of you're just dealing with your brain and your nervous system instead of your digestive system or your muscular skeletal system, well, of course you have to pay attention to it, just like you do every other aspect of your physical being.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Your physical health, but also your emotional and social health and your spiritual health, like all these things, right? We proactively pay attention, or at least we should be proactively paying attention to all of them. So of course, mental health would be part of that. Of course, we need to be doing the things to keep ourselves healthy. And then if there is, an extra set of stressors that come into play, sometimes medication is necessary. Sometimes going to see a counselor, having at least a good friend or someone you can talk to work through things is really necessary. And that's all okay. And, I have to, I just personally, I come from a family where there was a lot of stigma around mental health. And then some families, kind of everyone, takes pills and goes to counseling, and it's just kind of normal in it. So everyone sees it as normal. And so I've seen kind of both of those play out. But I know from my background in my family that it made me extra, even though I was very understanding, or at least I think I was very understanding and had sympathy and empathy for people who needed help. That was for them, not for me. Like, it was always for them, not for me. And over time, I had to realize, like, no, I have all these things piling up. I have all this extra stress. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm thinking about, like, when I'm going through my PhD program. I'm sure you felt the same thing when you were going through your PhD program. It can be just incredibly overwhelming when you're trying to carry all these burdens. And so then what are you going to do about it? Like, you can either try to bear it all yourself, and you may survive, but you may not. And it doesn't really say anything about you and your toughness. It just, people have different brain chemistry, people have different abilities and different support systems and such. And over time, I had to realize, like, it is okay if I need to go talk to somebody. It is okay if I need to take some medication to help with stress or anxiety or whatever. That's the way it is for everybody. I hope that we can get past that. I wish it didn't take me so long to get past that. even though I was okay with other people doing it, I wasn't okay with myself. And ultimately, as a leader, we need to lead out and model for our people vulnerability and to help them understand that, yes, this is completely okay. You're not going to be punished for it. You're not going to be seen as less than or weak because of it. But we're going to, like you said, we're going to be proactive about addressing all aspects of our health, holistically, looking at us as a holistic individual and all of the different needs that we have. And if we can do that, then we're going to have people that are going to be more healthy holistically and people that can thrive in their personal life, but also thrive at work. And that means they're going to do better work for the organization, to be more creative and innovative, and they're going to have less burnout, and we're going to retain them, and all those good things that are going to help the business succeed as well.
Exactly. I think one of the problems with seeing mental health as either you have a disorder or you don't is that you want to deny that you have anything that might be a disorder, and you wait until you're in dire straits to go get help. It's kind of like if you had a skin lesion, you wait until it's really bad to go find out that you have stage 4 cancer, instead of dealing with it when it first appeared. And I think we're far more likely to do that with our mental health, is that when we start to feel overwhelmed and stressed, instead of reaching some self-help materials, taking up mindfulness meditation, doing those sort of like early stage strategies that help, you just muscle through and tell yourself that you're fine, and until you are a complete wreck. It's like waiting until you have stage 4 depression or stage 4 anxiety before you go get help. That makes absolutely no sense. It's kind of like deal with it from the first signs of issues, and you're far more likely to recover more quickly.
Absolutely. So I think for leaders, then let's spend the rest of our time then talking about some practical strategies on how we can help combat burnout and help people, in a healthy way, deal with their stress and the anxiety they might feel at work, or even that might bleed into other aspects of their lives. One of the things that I'm taking away from our conversation so far is that we first and foremost, we just have to create a psychologically safe place, free of stigma, where we have an environment where people recognize that, yeah, it's important. Holistic health is important. That means mental health, just like every other aspect of health. So we model that. We create an environment where everyone can recognize and understand that. We certainly never punish people, or talk down or bad about people because they're seeking assistance with those sorts of things. And so creating that kind of an environment is a really good first step. So what are some of the other things we can do to actively combat workplace burnout and help people to deal with those stressors that they might be experiencing?
I think one of the best things, 2 things that I think are really important. One is it being a safe and okay place to talk about our struggles, because nobody doesn't struggle, whether you're the CEO of the company or you're the person who cleans offices at night. Everybody struggles with this from time to time. And so normalizing it, like recognizing that that's an issue and providing resources is useful. I know of some companies that have actually taken up some 10 or 15 minutes a couple times a week where they actually do a mindfulness exercise together. I think that when the C-level executives are modeling attention to your mental health, that makes it way more okay for everyone in the company. And the other thing is sometimes the people at the top feel the most fear about exposing that they struggle sometimes. And yet in this environment, with the pandemic going on and the uncertainty, everyone's struggling, and it makes no sense to pretend that you're not. So that's one thing. The other thing is really providing resources so that your employees can easily get access to resources, whether that's in a primary prevention way, whether that's in dealing with situational problems as they come up, or whether that's, getting the help you need in terms of therapy and medication and those kind of things. So a full range of things, that are available and easily accessible for your staff is really important. Another thing that's useful is making sure that as a company, you respect boundaries, that people aren't expected to be on a digital leash with their phone 24/7, that you can have a life and a job. And I think that helps a lot.
Yeah. I think so too. And an extension of that, maybe one more point I would make before we start to wrap up, is just in terms of taking time off. Now, many organizations, even now, it's becoming a popular thing to have unlimited PTO. So if you need it, take it, right? And theoretically, that sounds awesome. But it all depends on the culture, and it all depends on how it's modeled by leadership within the organization. Because whether you say, we have 3 weeks of paid vacation, or you have unlimited time off, or whatever, the reality is, especially in the US, people don't take their time off. We're like the lowest among all of the advanced industrialized nations in terms of the amount of time off that people take. And so no wonder burnout is high. And why? Because people feel, whether it's true or not, they feel that they're going to be somehow negatively impacted in their career or punished for taking time off. And so we need to make sure that we're modeling that for our people. And even if we have something like unlimited PTO, we need to make sure that we're really encouraging people to take regular breaks, take time off, and follow up with people about it. Make it part of your performance conversation. Like, how much time have you taken off this quarter? Okay, you haven't taken any. It's time to take a break, and really have those conversations with people. I think that's also going to be very important.
I think that's absolutely true.
Well, Sherry, it has been a pleasure talking with you today. I know at the time, and we will have to part ways here in just a few minutes. But before we close, I wanted to give you a chance to share with listeners how they can get connected with you and find out more about your work.
So the easiest way is to go to our website, which is www.taoconnect.org. We have lots of resources for people, and if going through the chat box is probably the easiest way for people to get you straight to me if you needed to talk to me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sherry. It's been a pleasure. I encourage listeners to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Sherry can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe. I hope you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership. Ordinary, everyday actions that produce extraordinary results. Consider how the nature of work has shifted over the past 50 years. With increased globalization, rapid technological advancement, and the shift in economic composition, the average job of today looks very different than the average job of 50 years ago. What will the jobs and organizations of tomorrow look like? Moreover, what does this all mean for organizational leaders? What are the core competencies and capabilities of organizations and their leadership that are prepared for continued disruption and geopolitical and socioeconomic shifts? Regardless of what the future holds, increasingly, leaders need to be socially minded, data-driven, decisive, champions of talent, and disruptors of the traditional notions of leadership, teams, organizations, and work. The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership will help you to explore your own leadership competencies and capabilities and consider ways to apply and implement them into your workplace and personal life. Check out Human Capital Innovations magazine, Human Capital Leadership. Human Capital Leadership is a free, interactive e-magazine with the mission to help individuals, leaders, and organizations find innovative approaches to maximize their human capital potential. We publish issues quarterly in August, November, February, and May. Take a look at the latest issue and let us know what you think. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week. Check out our new weekly LinkedIn newsletter, Alchemizing Human Capital, exploring industry trends via original research and interviews with executives and thought leaders from across the globe. We look forward to having you join us.